She looked like a tourist on the destroyer, until the Admiral recognized her voice. The USS Harrington was never the kind of ship that allowed civilians to wander freely. It was a frontline destroyer, steel, discipline, and precision, wrapped in the shape of a blade meant for the sea. Every sailor on board moved with purpose. Every boot step meant something. And that's why, on a warm afternoon across the Pacific, the crew froze for half a second when they saw her. She was standing near the rail, quiet, almost lost among the noise of drills and shouted commands. A simple blue jacket, a camera hanging from her neck, sunglasses pushed into her hair. She looked like she had stepped off a tourist boat, not a warship. Some of the sailors exchanged quick smirks. Others shook their heads. One young seaman nudged his friend. "Who let a tourist on board?" His friend laughed softly. "Probably someone's aunt. Or someone who won a raffle," another added. But she didn't react, not to the whispers, not to the stares. She stood still, breathing slowly, feeling the wind push against the ship's hull. There was something in the way she held that silence, something calm but heavy, like she wasn't seeing waves. She was remembering them. The officer of the deck noticed her presence and frowned. Civilians weren't supposed to be here, not during a high readiness drill. He started toward her, ready to ask for her documentation, but before he reached her, a group of sailors brushed past him. They were young, maybe too young, and they had the restless energy of people who didn't yet understand the weight of what they were guarding. "Ma'am," one of them called out, raising a brow as he neared her. "This area is restricted. You might want to stay with the visitor group." She turned her head, just a fraction, but her eyes, calm, steady, unshaken, settled on him with the cold clarity of someone who had seen storms he could not imagine. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she said softly. Her voice carried strangely, calm, controlled, almost trained. The sailor blinked, thrown off by the tone alone. She didn't sound like a tourist. She didn't sound like someone who had accidentally wandered onto a destroyer. She sounded like someone who had once stood exactly where they were standing. But before he could ask anything else, the ship's speakers crackled. "Attention all hands. Admiral Dawson arriving on deck." Immediately the crew straightened, back stiff, chins level, steps precise. Admiral Marcus Dawson wasn't just another officer. He was the kind of leader whose presence changed the very air on deck. Calm, disciplined, but powerful enough that even seasoned sailors subconsciously adjusted their uniforms. He stepped onto the deck with a purposeful stride, his eyes scanning everything the way a hawk tracks the horizon. The officers lined up. Salutes snapped into place. The drills paused. Everything returned to strict military rhythm, until his gaze shifted to her. He blinked once, hard, as if his mind couldn't process what his eyes were seeing. The XO stepped forward. "Sir, we're preparing for your inspection." But the Admiral wasn't listening. His attention had locked onto the woman in the blue jacket. The sailors around her exchanged confused glances. Why was the Admiral staring at a tourist? Had she done something wrong? Was she someone important? A murmur passed through the group. Does he know her? Why would an Admiral know a tourist? Maybe she's some kind of VIP? But then, very slowly, the woman lifted her head. The wind touched her hair. And for the first time since stepping aboard, she spoke in a voice just loud enough to carry across the silent deck. "Good afternoon, Admiral." And the moment she said it, the moment her voice touched the air, the Admiral froze. Not a flinch, not a slight reaction. His chest stopped mid-breath. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly, and a silence fell heavier than any command he'd ever given. He knew that voice. He knew it in the deepest part of his memory. A voice he once heard through static-filled radios, echoing across stormy seas. A voice that had cut through emergency alarms and chaos during missions the world still didn't know about. "No," he whispered under his breath. "It can't be." The sailors around him stiffened. The Admiral never lost composure. Ever. But something about this woman, This tourist-looking stranger had unraveled years of military steel around him. He stepped toward her slowly, as if approaching a ghost. "Say something else," he murmured. The officers nearby exchanged confused looks. Why was the Admiral speaking like that? Why did he sound hopeful? The woman lowered her sunglasses, eyes meeting his, with a steadiness that cut through the air like a blade. "I didn't expect you to recognize me," she said quietly. That voice again, calm, controlled, commanding, in its own quiet way, and Admiral Dawson's entire posture shifted, not to authority, but to respect, deep, heavy, personal respect. The XO stared at him, stunned. "Sir, who is she?" The Admiral didn't answer. He couldn't. His gaze remained locked on the woman he once thought lost to the sea. Behind them, the sailors were frozen, whispering urgently, "What is happening?" Why is the Admiral looking at her like that? Who is she? But the woman didn't look at them. She didn't explain. She didn't smile. She simply rested her hand on the cold steel railing of the destroyer, a rail she had once held before, a deck she had once walked, a sea she had once commanded. And then, in a voice that carried across the deck with unnerving familiarity, she said, "You always told me the sea never forgets, Admiral." His breath caught, because her words weren't just a greeting. They were a memory only 2 people in the world could have shared, a classified one that had once saved an entire ship, a mission the Admiral thought she did not survive, and now she was standing here, alive, silent, disguised as a tourist, on the very destroyer that wouldn't exist without her. The sailors leaned in, desperate to hear what happened next, but the Admiral said only one word, barely audible, but powerful enough that every officer nearby felt the shock run through him. "Commander?" The woman didn't answer. Not yet. She turned her gaze toward the horizon, letting the wind move quietly around her, because the truth, the real truth, had not been spoken. Not yet. Not here. Not in front of them. For a long moment, no one dared speak. The destroyer drifted across calm water, but the tension on deck felt like a storm ready to break. The sailors stood in absolute silence as Admiral Dawson faced the woman who had once disappeared into the sea without a trace. He stepped closer, his voice low, shaken in a way no one had ever heard from him. "I was told your vessel didn't make it," he said, "that no one survived." She finally turned her eyes back to him, calm, steady, unreadable. "That report wasn't wrong," she answered softly. "I just wasn't on the list." The crew around them shifted, confusion thick in the air. The XO tried to understand. "Sir, was she Navy?" The Admiral didn't answer. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said everything. This was no tourist, no visitor, no accident. This was someone the Navy once trusted with classified operations that never reached public ears. The Admiral exhaled slowly, almost painfully. "You were the voice on the comms during the Corsair incident," he said. "You rerouted an entire fleet while your ship was sinking underneath you." Whispers exploded across the deck. "That was her? No way. She's the one from that operation." "I thought that was just a rumor." "She saved the 7th Fleet." The wind swept across her jacket as she looked back at the sea, at the exact horizon where that mission once happened. She spoke quietly, but her words carried the weight of memory. "We were hit at night. We lost power, steering, everything. But the storm was closing in, and if the fleet didn't change course, they would have sailed straight into the impact zone." She paused. "So I used whatever equipment was left, and my voice was the only thing the fleet could hear." The Admiral swallowed hard. "And when the storm cleared, your ship wasn't there." She nodded. "I went into the water. The rest is what the sea chose to do with me." The sailors stared at her in awe. She didn't speak like someone bragging. She spoke like someone who still carried the ghosts of that night. The Admiral cleared his throat, trying to steady himself. "Why didn't you contact us? Why disappear for all these years? She lowered her head for a moment, her voice quieter. I wanted peace. After that night, I didn't want medals or attention. I wanted silence, the kind only the ocean understands. Her words settled over the deck like a soft wave. The XO stepped forward, cautiously respectful now. Ma'am, may we know your name? She hesitated, not out of fear, out of humility, out of the weight of everything she'd left behind. Finally she spoke. Commander Arya Hale. The deck went silent, dead silent. Even the waves seemed to stop for a heartbeat. Commander Arya Hale wasn't just a name. She was a legend, whispered across naval academies. A name tied to impossible survival, unmatched navigation instincts, and a voice that had once saved an entire fleet. Most believed she was myth. Some believed she died a hero. None believed she would ever stand on a destroyer again. The Admiral straightened, not as her superior, but as someone finally standing before a ghost returned from the sea. Commander Hale, he said, voice firm but reverent. This ship owes its existence to you. We all do. Her expression softened, not proud, not boastful, just quietly accepting. I'm not here for acknowledgement, she said. I came to see the ship that survived because of a single decision made in the dark. The Admiral nodded. Then let us honor that decision properly. He turned to the XO. Pipe the side, he ordered. Full honors. The XO froze, stunned. Sir, honors? For a civilian? She's no civilian, the Admiral said sharply. She's a commander of the United States Navy. The boatswain's pipe shrieked through the air, sharp, ceremonial, unmistakable. Every sailor snapped to attention as Commander Arya Hale stepped forward. And for the first time in years, she stood where she once belonged. Not as a ghost, not as a tourist, but as a woman who had once commanded the sea and saved the very deck under her feet. She looked at the Admiral. I didn't come here to return, she said softly, but I'm grateful for the welcome. The Admiral's voice softened. The sea may forget its storms, Commander, but we don't forget those who weather them. She smiled, small, almost hidden, but real. And as the destroyer cut through the water, surrounded by sailors who now looked at her with awe instead of confusion, Commander Arya Hale stepped to the rail, the ocean wind lifting her hair, the horizon wide and open before her. At last the sea had given back the voice it once tried to take, and the ship she saved welcomed her home.